Well, hello and welcome. My name is Sabrina, and this is Stylish and Sustainable. I am so glad that you found your way here. If this is your first time, Stylish and Sustainable is a podcast and media company that I created to empower women to live more sustainably and just rock that sustainable lifestyle. So we do it together, we mess up together, and we talk about how awesome and sometimes how hard it is to live sustainably. We've got an amazing guest today. Her name is Emma, and she is the founder of Switch Magazine. Switch Magazine is just that, a magazine about the switches that we all need to make to live more sustainably. But Emma does it in a way that is super accessible and empowering and beyond anything, just insanely exciting. You guys are going to love her, and I'm so excited for you to hear what she has to say about what her most effective switches have been and kind of how she goes about making changes in her daily life. She also has an amazing tip about how to tackle making changes and how to begin breaking it down to make it more accessible. But before we dive in, I have a quick message from our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering you guys a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/stylishandsustainable and browse the crazy, endless number of audio programs that they have. Download a title free today and start listening. It's super easy. Just go to audibletrial.com/stylishandsustainable. Find yourself an awesome guided meditation or pick yourself up some of that Zero Waste Home by B. Johnson, and you'll already be on your way not only to listening to an awesome audiobook, but living a more sustainable life. All right, guys, now that we're back, let's dive in. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
I am so glad that we made time to sit down and chat with each other, and I have so many questions today for you about Switch Magazine and all the fun stuff you're doing with the magazine. But first, I really want to just kind of focus on you, and I want to hear more about how you came to be a part of the sustainable living movement and kind of your sustainable life story. I would love to just hear about what motivated you to start living more sustainably, and I guess what it was that kind of helped you to wake up to the environmental crisis, if it even was just like one thing or if it was a culmination of a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people seem to think that there's kind of just one thing, and it's almost the final straw, and you think, well, I really need to do something right now. But for me, I kind of had the opposite. It was very, very slow, and I started to kind of just slowly realize the impact that everything I was doing and that everyone else was doing was having on the planet. So yeah, I think it was just a combination of things. I think, as it is for a lot of people, it was documentaries, things like Blue Planet, more recently, Our Planet, it's up on Netflix at the moment. There was a lot of that, but also I started to realise that mainstream media weren't really talking about these kind of things, or at least not the kind of switches, if you like, the kind of things that you can do at home, things that you can swap out about your lifestyle. So I think a lot of it I came across on Instagram, generally on people's blogs and things. And I just started to realise that actually there are things that you can do, however small, and those changes do add up and they really can make a difference.
Absolutely. I think it can seem like all of our little changes are just so small. And that kind of mindset reminds me actually of this quote that went around, and it went something like, "It's only one straw," said 7 billion people. And it's just like you said, that small change really, it does add up if we can all start making that one small change. So I guess my question would be, what was the first thing that you changed about your lifestyle? What was your first switch?
I guess, again, it was quite slow, but I think it must have been my diet. So I eat a mainly plant-based diet. I wouldn't, I'm not strictly vegan, but I'm somewhere between vegetarian and vegan on that scale. I'm somewhere along those lines. So I think just cutting out a lot of animal products and meat in particular, that was probably the first thing that I did. And then on the same lines, there was a lot of things around food and food waste that I became aware of. So I think, again, it helps kind of being on a plant-based diet because there were, if you've got a fridge full of vegetables, you can make so many things out of that without it going to waste. And you don't need to worry about sell-by dates as much. You can really make the most of what you've got. So I think being aware of how much food I was wasting before, and then what I could do to reduce that was really helpful. As well, having maybe something like a compost bin where you can put all of that food waste in, if it's just vegetables and things, to really make use of that. And I think as well, there are a lot of things kind of in the kitchen that I would use. I would use disposable things like cling film and plastic wrap and foil. I would use it so often without really thinking about it. And it was kind of every day I was using these things and so many disposable items and disposable plastic bags, when really you just don't need that. If you can find new ways of storing things in jars and containers and things, it really does make a difference. So yeah, I guess a lot of my first switches were in the kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen is where a lot of people start, I think. That's definitely where I started, and I think it's because it's so universal, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is something, well, obviously eating is something that all of us do. So I think it was something that's so broad. It just really, people realize that everyone does it, but that means everyone can also make that change as well.
Absolutely. So, moving into, I guess, kind of talking about our whys about living sustainably. So, a lot of the time here on the podcast, I like to encourage people to think about their whys. And you kind of mentioned that your eyes were opened through documentaries, and a lot of the content on social media is so much more honest, I think, in a lot of ways, and less biased than, like you mentioned, how mainstream media is. And so we get a lot more of the truth. But I guess you switched your diet and you are making all these changes, and you even went so far as to start a eco-minded business. So what is the why behind all of these changes? What really got you going?
I think a lot of people probably think that my goal is to maybe have a zero waste lifestyle, and that seems to be a goal for a lot of people, but actually I don't aim to have a zero waste lifestyle. I think my goal is to just reduce my impact as much as I can, and I think I've really accepted that that is a continually evolving process. So it's not something that just one day I'll wake up and think, right, I've done absolutely everything I can do to make my lifestyle more sustainable. But I think if anything, I've realized to just keep going, and it's going to keep changing, and I need to keep changing my lifestyle as I go. So I guess my why would be to reduce my impact on the planet. I kind of think it is unfair to just be taking all these resources and things from the planet and having such a negative impact on it, when really there were so many things you can do to reduce that impact. But I wouldn't say there was, I don't aim to just reduce my waste and things. There are so many other things as well as aiming for a zero waste lifestyle.
I love the idea that we might be able to, like you said, stop having such an overwhelmingly net negative impact and change that to something that results in like a positive impact, that our net impact is actually positive. But to do that, we have definitely got to make some switches, which, like you said, is a really perfect transition actually to my next question, which is essentially just like, what is Switch Magazine? I would love for you to explain to our listeners what the magazine is and what inspired you to start it.
Of course. So, Switch Magazine is a lifestyle magazine for environmentally conscious consumers. So, essentially, that means people that, they might have already switched to a reusable coffee cup, bought the reusable straw, they've bought a tote bag, so they're not using disposable plastic carry bags, but they're kind of at the point where they're thinking, okay, well, what now? What do I do? What can I do to make a change? Because I felt like so many people knew about those, key switches, things like use a reusable water bottle. But there is so much more that people can be doing. And I felt like really there wasn't a bridge between that kind of surface level information and then sort of deep scientific reports about environmental issues. So I guess what I wanted to do was make a magazine that does bridge that gap. And it's still really accessible for people that, they don't know much at all about environmental issues or sustainability. But I wanted to kind of introduce them to some different ways that they can reduce their impact, some switches, if you like, to make in their life. And I guess, yeah, that was my goal. It was to bridge that gap, and that's what the magazine does.
Yes. Bridging that gap is a tricky thing. And especially when we are trying to bridge that gap for ourselves at the same time while we're like empowering and educating all these other people. And I love just everything about the idea of Switch Magazine. And it's so exciting that there is just another resource out there for people and that it's created by women. I mean, even better. I don't think you could get any better than that. So, to follow up, you created this amazing magazine. You know some of the sustainable life switches like the back of your hand. What are some of the most effective switches that you personally have made?
I think, as I mentioned before, probably switching my diet has probably had the most impact overall. And, that was probably about 3 years ago I started to sort of transition to that. So that's probably realistically what's made the most impact. But I also think almost a general awareness of what I'm consuming, and a kind of change in mindset. So I think once you're aware and you start to realize how much waste you're producing or where your food or clothes come from, I think once you sort of get the ball rolling with being aware, that you start to notice so many more things. So it can be great to start off with some really easy swaps, like using a bamboo toothbrush, which really that makes barely any difference to your own experience, but it can add up and make such a big impact on the environment, a positive impact, that is. And other things like trying out soap bars, so bars of soap, shampoo bars, conditioner, just avoiding the unnecessary plastic packaging. And I think once you start to realize that actually it doesn't have a negative impact on you at all, really, it might take a little bit of time to find the right product that's best for you. But I think once you found that and you start to realize that actually, sometimes, a lot of the time, it's actually a lot better quality product. And just accepting that, I think, is probably going to be the most effective thing you can do. Starting to get, introduce yourself to these different products. And I find it is a lot easier once you've got started.
I love that you mentioned how it really doesn't change your experience for the most part. Yeah, a lot of these products, it's just as simple as changing where or how you're buying something.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, speaking of changing where, how we're buying and consuming and bringing in that level of awareness, I think it is so exciting, all of these new environmentally friendly products that are popping up that do, like you said, enable us to live with little to no impact and sometimes even a positive impact. But the tricky thing is that we don't want everyone to just throw out everything they have, and go buy only clothes with natural fibers and so on and so forth, because that in itself can create just a lot of unnecessary waste. So my question for you is, where would you say it's important to draw the line, and how did you make the switch? Where are places in your life that you kind of kept the conventional products and are using them out until they're gone or worn out? And what are the products that you decided, this is worth it for my health and the health of the environment to just toss and start fresh?
I guess I've got two main areas where I've had to think about that. The first is probably skincare. I have so many products that just need to be used up. And, I haven't bought them recently. I've had these for a while, but I kind of had them before I started to transition to this more eco-friendly lifestyle. So I think it is, as you said, it's so important to just use what you have before you start buying new things. Otherwise, you really are just, completely avoiding the objective. So yeah, for me, I have a lot of skincare products, and because I have such sensitive skin, even the most natural of products can often be quite irritating. So for me, I still have quite recently bought skincare products which are packaged in plastic. I can't really trace how they were made or how natural they are. But that's something that I think for me, that's one of the products that, for at least the near future, I'll probably stick with what I know because I know that's best to me and my health. And then, secondly, I think, and this is something that I discussed in Switch magazine actually, was that sometimes there can be limiting factors that stop people from doing as much as they'd like to. So, for example, maybe for someone it might be disability, or maybe financial issues might stop someone from doing as much as they'd like to. But there can also be other things. So, for me, it's food allergies. So, obviously, a lot of people have nut allergies, or they're intolerant to lactose and things. Personally, I can't have gluten. So, as I'm celiac, that means that I have to completely avoid cross contamination with gluten, which is most commonly found in things like wheat flour. So, obviously, as you can imagine, wheat flour just gets everywhere. So, that means that I'm not able to go into, say, a bulk buying store, where you take your own empty glass jars and you scoop out how much rice or pasta and things you want and weigh it, take it to the till. I'm not able to shop like that because there's a chance of contamination and people getting things mixed up, putting the wrong scoop in the wrong jar. And there's a lot of other things as well, like I'm not able to go to a bakery and buy some, bread and things plastic free. So I still have to buy a lot of products that are still wrapped in plastic or sealed in some way. And that's something that I really can't change. I have to make sure that I don't, I don't get contaminated food. So that is something which is really annoying that I can't change right now. And hopefully it will in the future, kind of as more brands get more aware of this, there'll be more biodegradable packaging and things. But right now, it's something that I've just got to stick with because, as you said, obviously the health of the planet is really important, but there are times when you need to also consider your own health and what's best for you as well.
Absolutely. It's such a challenging thing to come up against those issues, especially when, like in your case, there's just really no alternative, like you said. And I think what I have found in speaking with everyone else, and I'm sure that you can echo this, is that we just have to find a compromise. But as you mentioned, going at everything with awareness is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it really is, like, sometimes there are great things like bamboo toothbrushes or shampoo bars, and you find out they work for you and they don't have fragrances or whatever else that is bad for your body, no SLS, and it's great. It's good for the planet, it's good for your body, and most of the time, honestly, I found sometimes it's better for my checkbook too.
Yeah, totally.
But there are always those places where it's just going to take longer and we have to make the compromises. But identifying those places and just coming to grips with them is healthy, I think, and not being down on ourselves that we're not able at this point to make the switch is one of the most important things because it allows us to keep going in a positive direction, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think you need to stay motivated with things like this. And if I just let that really get me down and think, well, I still have to buy some food that is in plastic, it, as long as I'm aware of that and I'm on the lookout for alternatives and things I can do differently, I think that's okay. No one is going to be perfect. No matter, who it is, there's always going to be things in their life where they don't, they're not perfectly sustainable. I mean, what is a perfectly sustainable lifestyle? So, yeah, I think just being aware and doing what you can and being okay with it when there are certain limiting factors. And obviously that varies for everyone.
Absolutely. So that actually leads us kind of perfectly into what are the positive side effects you've seen of living sustainably for your mental and physical health? So, all of the good benefits for the planet aside, how have you seen your shift to living sustainably benefit you?
Yeah, I think obviously there's the obvious one that you mentioned. It can be much, much cheaper, especially when you really get into it and you work out what works for you. And it's all about investing in investment pieces and good quality things. If we were talking about, clothes or furniture or, anything, investing in great quality is something that's really going to last you and you're not going to need to keep replacing. But I think that makes it actually quite a nice experience, and you can kind of look forward to buying certain things because you're treating yourself to something new, and you may not be doing that very often. So I think that's always nice to have something to look forward to, and it's another little positive added in there. But as you mentioned, kind of benefits for your mental health as well. I actually find that it's great. I mean, the term mindfulness has been thrown around a lot recently in the last kind of year or so. But I think there really is a big link between being mindful and being aware of your impact on the environment. And I feel like there is such a close link between, a low impact lifestyle and being mindful of what you're consuming and what you're making and maybe the food that you're growing yourself. I think, there's definitely an element of kind of slow living and slowing down, not rushing to just consume everything you can, and really thinking about your actions and what you're buying and what you can do to change, which I think really is actually a really nice break from everyday 21st century lifestyle.
Ah, yes, you're so right about that. And I love that you mentioned slow living and how slowing down is so refreshing. Oh my gosh, it's so refreshing sometimes because we do move at such a fast pace, and awareness does bring that in so many ways. So I think my last question for you, you've mentioned, especially for you, that there wasn't really a concrete, like, oh, this is the first thing I'm going to do, other than changing your diet. And that's a huge shift, I think, for some people. What would you say if someone came up to you, and I'm sure you'll get people like this who are reading Switch Magazine or at the very, very beginning, what would you say to someone who asked you, where do I start? What is the first thing I can do?
I think what I would say is pick something. It could be a room in your house. You might pick your bathroom, go in, see what's in there. It might even be helpful to see what you've even got in the bin, what you're throwing away, and being aware of, just seeing what's in there. You might be looking at empty bottles of shower gel and shampoo. You might have plastic toothbrushes in there, even dental floss. That's often made using plastic. There are so many things just within one room that you can start to slowly change. So that might be the case that you realise, okay, I'm throwing away so many bottles of shower gel. So what can I do? Where can I go to buy just a bar of soap? Which isn't a difficult thing to find. It's very, very straightforward. And then once you've done that, do something else. Maybe choose something every week, challenge yourself to change something else. And that might be a really slow process for some people, but you are still making that progress. And, a week is plenty of time to look for an alternative, to get your hands on it and start using it. And it really, I think, introduces you quite slowly. So, that doesn't just apply to the bathroom. You can do that in the kitchen, in your bedroom, in any of your living areas. There's lots of different places. And I think focusing on one small area and then kind of working your way out is a great way to build up that awareness and to really, I guess, introduce you slowly, but still make a difference. And it can be quite nice when you look back and realise how many weeks you've been doing that for and what you've achieved and what you've managed to change in that time. So I think, that would be my main advice. Start small, because all your changes are going to be quite small. But when all those changes do add up, it really can have such a big impact.
I love that so much. Taking one room at a time is such a great digestible idea. Oh, I love it. So, moving forward, how can people get a hold of Switch Magazine? What are your plans for the magazine in the future? How can people find you, follow you? How can we support you?
So the main way you can find us is going to Instagram and searching switch.magazine. So you'll find everything on that page. You'll find a link to our digital edition. So if you'd like to read issue 1, it's completely free to read. It's available in the link in our bio on Instagram. We've also got a limited number of printed copies, which we're giving away as review copies. So we'll be holding some giveaways if you're interested in getting your hands on a printed copy. And yeah, we plan to, in the future, continue sharing some of our favourite sustainable switches on Instagram. And we're currently gathering feedback on our first issue to see what's going to happen with our second issue, which we've got ideas in the works, but we're still at very, very early stages with that. So we'd love to hear your feedback. So do get in touch with us on Instagram, and hopefully we'll be able to incorporate some of those ideas into our second issue.
Awesome. Oh, that's so exciting. I'm so excited to be able to watch you guys grow and spread such an amazing message. And besides all of that, the aesthetic is insane. I love your guys' very clean aesthetic. It's so exciting. Thank you, Emma, for sitting down and chatting with me.
Thank you.
It's really lovely. And I hope that everyone goes and finds you guys and continues to follow the growth of Switch Magazine and to support such an exciting, hopeful message that you guys are sending out.
Yeah, all we want to do is spread that message, get as many people as possible on board.
All right, gals, well, you heard it here first. Switch Magazine is the new magazine that you need to be reading. It is started by just this amazing kick-butt woman who has clearly, as you heard, this fantastic accent. And she just has her ish together. I think that Emma has the heart behind it, and it shows. It shows in the magazine, and it shows in the message, and it's so exciting. Thank you guys again for tuning in, for spending time with me. I value your time so much, and I'm so glad that you are sitting down and listening to me chat with these other amazing women. If you ever have any questions about anything we talk about on an episode, just DM me on Insta. I am here for you guys. This is a community, and I am so excited to just go back and forth with you guys, answer your questions, and get to know what you're still wondering about. What are the answers that you need from me? Because I'm here to give them for you. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to hit that follow. And if you're on iTunes, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe. You are fantastic, and I appreciate you. I value you. And more than anything, you are capable of making the switch. Know that. Tune in next week. We're talking about compost. That's right. It is so important and it's amazing. There will be talk about things like poop and worms, all of the things one would not expect to hear about on a podcast titled Stylish. But alas, that's the sustainable life, guys. Talk to you next week. Sending good vibes.